Hello. Oh. All right, guys, take a seat. We're going to get started. Is your lab is on? Are you good?
Check, 1, 2. Hello?
Yeah,
Can anyone hear me?
loud.
Hello?
Yeah, they're going to have to turn you up, but talk loud.
Is this hot? Is this hot?
Check.
It's hot.
You don't have to turn it on, but we should.
1, 2.
Hello? Yeah.
Hey there.
Hello?
Hey
Test.
there.
Hello. Did you?
Can I get some volume?
Hey there.
Do you want? Are you going to ask
Check,
them for
1,
volume,
2.
or you just need me to talk loud, or are you going to ask to bring it up? Bring up my volume?
No, I don't think so.
It's like cup it.
If you're coming to the Canada panel, come sit down, join us. Welcome. Bon,
The
how
room
do you say
gets
it in
so
French?
empty so fast. What's going on?
Bon vit.
Welcome.
Everyone just left.
Okay, do you want to give me
I don't even hear you.
do you want to give me a mic?
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll just wait for it to get a little bit quieter and everyone to sit down. Are we ready? Oh, that sounds like somebody's ready.
Or frisky.
Or
You a little frisky there? Or? That's
Okay.
pretty cute.
let's get started.
Okay.
Welcome to the PMC 2023. It's nice to be here. I see a lot of familiar and friendly faces. This is the first time that I've moderated a panel, so FYI, I am picturing all of you stark naked right now. Just kidding. Only some of you. Seriously, it's great to be back in person this year. I've been attending the PMC for almost 30 years, back from its humble beginnings in Vegas. I don't know if anybody here remembers that, but there was maybe 10 or 15 people in the room then. And it's pretty incredible to see how it's grown to what it is today, and to find so many competitive companies get together and break bread and get drunk and party. It's really quite spectacular. So thank you also to Morgan and the board for the incredible work you do and for inviting us here to talk about Canada. Who doesn't love talking about themselves? So the agenda, what we're going to talk about today, as the title suggests, we're going to talk about Canada. When doing business with another country, it's important to know a bit about the people, the culture, the language, and even the right gifts to buy us. Well, we can talk about that later. So we'll give you a general bird's eye view of Canada, and then we'll talk about some specifics about changes in legislation and copyright law in Canada and other things we think you'll find interesting and valuable. We'll also leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions, and I think lunch follows us, so most of us will be here after if you want to talk to us. So I want to get an idea of who is in the room. First of all, how many Canadians do we have? Show of hands. Canadians? Hey, that's great to see. Okay, composers. How many composers? Wow. Looks like half the room are creators here. That's great. Who is a publisher or distributes libraries? Excellent. Okay. Great. Well, then I'm going to introduce the panel. Well, I'll actually let them introduce themselves, but I will tell you that everyone on this panel has written production music or for production music libraries. Two of us have created our own libraries. Two are established, well-recognized film composers, and one is a Grammy winner and possibly soon another Grammy winner. So, Gagan on my far left, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about your beginnings, and how you ended up in production music.
Sure. Thanks, Karen. Hi, everybody. My name is Gagan Singh. I am the creative executive for film, TV, and visual media at SOCAN. So, excuse me, SOCAN is the PRO, the ASCAP, BMI, CSAC of Canada, if you didn't know. My background is a decade spanning of music as a composer in film and television music, also producing records, and with this gentleman to my right, Mr. Ross Hardy, I've had the great pleasure of working with him and his business partner with Hard Music and producing some library music there. So yeah, it's been an interesting career for me, so I'll be excited to talk more about it. And should I pass it over to my right here?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nathalie Bonnet. I grew up in Montreal, so I'm French-Canadian. And I started out as a classical violinist, started at 4 years old and built a career as a solo violinist until I dove into pop, rock, jazz, improv, and everything else off the sheet music, which led to composing. And on tour, I decided to kind of really take a major step forward and did a full master's certificate with Berklee Online in film and TV, which then really, that's when I discovered my passion for composing. At that point, I was just trying out any way to get to LA because I felt like that was where it was happening for this composition aspect that I was wanting to pursue. And as I did that, I had my first internship with Michael Levine, who's actually in the room. And then from that point on, actually, I started learning more about production music because Mirette Sereg, also here, also from the Empath label, basically gave me a very short intro to what it is to do production music, and that was my first steps into production music. And I've been doing a bunch of albums recently, and we can talk about that later. But that's how I got into production music, and now I live in LA. Oh well. So 2 years ago, I was part of this project called Women Warriors: The Voices of Change, and it won the Grammy for Best Classical Compendium. And yeah, thank you. 8 women composers on that project, so we're very proud of that. And this year, I am, for your consideration, with a production music album called Aspirations on Audio Network label. And yeah, voting starts next week, so we'll see.
My name's Ross Hardy. Some of you guys might know me. Some of you guys might even like me. I'm a Canadian, without a doubt. All about and all that. Yes, we do say A and all those things. Yes, we are funny people. There's no question about that either. I started in the production music industry in 1990. I was an embryo. I know most of you are looking at me going, he can't be that old, right? Yes, I am that old. So 1990, I started as a 20-year-old. I worked for a company in downtown Toronto, and those days, we had to go into stock rooms and pull out vinyl albums. We used to have thousands of vinyl albums. We'd pull them out and bring them up, and we'd have to put the stylus in the phonograph and all that, and we'd have to cut that track to monotape, and we'd have to deliver it to the film companies and the ad agencies. Anyway, so I had no idea that I was actually in the production music until I was about 2 or 3 years in on that job. I met Karen at that time. We actually both worked in the same building. And I remember Karen running around and doing her work and stuff, and I couldn't figure out what the hell it was she was doing. And ultimately, she came over to me and she goes, hey, you're a musician. I'm obviously paraphrasing. She said, why don't you compose for my label? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I did. My first composition in production music is actually on Karen's label that she built back in 1991, 92? 96, okay, so there you go. And then from there on, I just ended up composing for multiple production music labels, stayed that course for many, many years, and I built a really wonderful, healthy, creative, fun career. And I kind of became a little bit of a unicorn with respect to being a composer in Canada, doing that much work in the production music space. That, of course, led to a whole bunch of different opportunities for me later on down the road, working and running a production music company, and then, of course, building my own production music labels, which are distributed through APM and BMG and whatnot, a very traditional style type of label, but we're 100% Canadian. All of our content's 100% Canadian. So I can speak to our industry from that perspective quite well. That's me.
Okay.
Wait, shots.
No, maple syrup.
So I don't know if you guys can see, but I think Karen and Ross brought us some maple syrup shots. I don't know when we get to experience these, but... Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know if I need the sugar
This
right
early?
now.
Isn't it a little early for a maple syrup shot?
Okay, just a wee
I'll wait
bit.
till after the...
Hold on.
All right.
Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but
Cheers.
I do this at home. Cheers. Ready?
Cheers.
Wait till we get talking after this.
Oh, jeez.
All right, ready?
Where's the wine?
Canada.
Canada, eh?
Cheers. Maple syrup.
Oh my God, that's good. Okay. Now let's get serious.
I did the whole thing.
I guess I should introduce myself. Karen Nightingale. I've been with APM for almost 12 years. I'm the Director of Sales for their Canadian office. How I got started, I was a singer-songwriter. I mean, with a name like Nightingale, how do you not end up in the music business? But I started producing and writing for other artists, and I found that I really enjoyed being behind the scenes more than in front of the audience. And I started my own company, music company, Nightingale Music, in 1992. I hate to say to date myself, but the truth is it was 1992, and we did everything. We did wrote for music, wrote for film and TV and commercials. We did editing, we did music supervision, clearances, admin, pretty much everything. And how we landed on production music Well, in the early 90s, I co-wrote a bunch of sports music for a broadcaster in Canada. It was called Global, it's now Chorus. They paid us very well for this music, but they also let us keep the rights, which is very unusual. So I took all that music and I sent it to both ABC and NBC in the US because they had great sports promos departments. And I sent a reel-to-reel tape. I don't know how many of you remember reel-to-reel, probably just, yeah, I see a few hands there. There you go.
I don't remember
so
it.
quarter-inch reel-to-reel. And ABC called and said, yeah, we love the music. We'd like to use it for our sports promos. How do you want to work this? And I was just sort of making it up as I went along, but I just said, well, how is $100 per 30 seconds? And you can fax us and let us know when you've used the music. So I have to tell you, the fax machine was going every day, all day. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I just thought, well, this is kind of nice. It's music that I've already written. You know, I'm not having to fix things in the middle of the night and, you know, listen to briefs. It's just music I already wrote. And we made a lot of money from that. In 1996, I started the Nightingale Music Library. And in fact, we just sold it a couple of years ago to Sony EMI, and it's now under KPM. So, yeah, I've been in this space for a while, and as Ross said, he wrote on our very first album, Power, Speed, and Motion, a couple of rock songs. Go figure. Yeah, go figure. So, those are the intros. Let's talk about Canada, the myths, the truths, and the facts. The myths. We don't all live in igloos, at least not the four of us. It's not cold all year, and we don't all love poutine. The truths. We do say A and sorry a lot, and maple syrup is our national pride. Some facts. Canada is the second largest country by landmass behind Russia. US is fourth. As big as we are, Canada only has 38 million people, which is 1/10 the size of the US. We have our own Canadian currency, which fluctuates against the US dollar, and today, 1 Canadian dollar is worth 75 cents US. Our film and advertising budgets are less than those in the US. And I would say when considering doing business in Canada, all of this will help you just manage your expectations. With that said, despite the smaller budgets and a modest population, Canada punches well above its weight class. From arts and entertainment to technology, science, and human rights, Canada's contributions are significant and far-reaching. Some examples: Canadians invented insulin, the walkie-talkie, the pacemaker, kerosene, and the Wonder Bra. Film and TV: Norman Jewison, David Cronenberg, James Cameron, Guy Madden. And TV shows: Schitt's Creek, Degrassi, Orphan Black, Trailer Park Boys, Handmaid's Tale, and Letterkenny. And music, of course: Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, Celine Dion, Tragically Hip, Drake, Justin Bieber, Bare Naked Ladies, Michael Bublé, The Weeknd, Deadmau5, and Shawn Mendes.
And Nathalie Bonin.
Oh my God, yes, of course.
Let's not forget.
Let's not forget. So, let's talk with the panelists. I'm going to start with a very broad question and let you guys have fun with it. Canadians love their country. Why? What's so special about it? Take it away.
May I? Yes. Okay.
Please.
Well, I think just looking at this Canadian panel, one can easily discern that diversity and inclusion is something that we are very proud of in Canada, and we take it very seriously. Thank you. And I'm the middle-aged white dude. Needless to say, but it's awesome, and I'm going to tell a little story and put it into a practical phrase for everyone to get. When we started our company, we determined we were going to be 100% Canadian, all of our content. Yes, we did that, but 4 years, 5 years after we had developed all this content, say 100 albums or more, we discovered that just through hiring the best composer for the job, that was our mission, was to hire the best composer for that album. And just through osmosis, through our just the natural way and how we embrace cultures in Canada, 4 or 5 years later, we determined that we were 50% of our content came from the BIPOC community. That's Black, Indigenous, people of color, for those of you who are not aware. We had over 30% of our composers were female. And we looked at those stats and we were like, wow, we did not expect that. We were not gunning for that. That is just hiring the best composers for the album, and they are all Canadian. So I think that is more or less a picture of how beautiful our creative environment, how inclusive our creative environments are up there. That's one story.
Well, I can say that it is, I love Canada because it is a friendly country. I think we're known for that. Sometimes even to the point of being a little too polite, but I've learned how to be less polite in LA. That's good. But it's I think we have, like Russ said, a lot of diversity and a lot of various opportunities that can arise from that. And I think that the fact that there is also two very distinct languages is very important, because there's a strong European, French-European, heritage that is throughout the eastern part, and combined with the more English side, it just really brings two sides to the same medal within the same country, and that's very particular because there's different values, and if you embrace all of them, it makes a very rich country. So I would think that, yeah, that's one of my take on.
So I remember, not production, off the topic of production music for a second, but I remember the Billboard Top 20 charts. Well, I don't know if it was 2022 or 2021. There was a moment in that cycle, a period, where out of the top 10 songs, 6 out of 10 were written by Canadian songwriters. And if you look at some of the top, major label top acts in the States right now, there is you look at the top 20, there's something 7, 8 out of those 20 are coming out of Canada. So that's, when Karen, you said we really punch well above our weight. That's also true with our film and television composers. At SOCAN, we represent a handful of tremendous, top-tier film and TV composers. Names like Keith Power, Andrew Lockington, Michael and Jeff Dana, Stefan Macchio, and Nathalie Bonin, and a lot of these names, they've made their way into the States, into Europe, on a global market, and it's I think it's like you said, Karen, with 38 million people, that's like the size of the state of California. So to do that, there's really an infrastructure for developing the arts. And I was talking to Ross and Karen offline about this, that for myself, I was born and raised in the greater Toronto area. Some of you might be familiar with Toronto or maybe have ties to it, but cities like Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, there's such a hub for culture. You can try any type of cuisine you want. There's so much inspiration for culture, and that I think bleeds into the music. So if you're any type of music creator, you're bound to be inspired by that, and then I think the world takes notice of that. At least that was what I leveraged in Canada.
Great, and thank you so much. Clearly Canada's really multicultural. Anywhere you go in Canada, particularly in the major cities, Toronto, you have Little Italy, Greektown, Chinatown, and they're like mini cities within the city. And we're very, Canada's known for allowing probably more immigrants and refugees, I think, than almost anywhere else. But yeah, it is a very welcoming country and definitely multicultural. Okay, let's talk some nuts and bolts. Canadian content. This is a very big subject in Canada. Canadian pride is deeply rooted, and from a very young age, we're encouraged to support and buy Canadian. This national sentiment extends to our film and music industries. The Canadian government provides substantial funding, tax credits, and incentives for productions that qualify as Canadian or are filmed in Canada. Our broadcasters are also mandated to air a certain percentage of Canadian content and reinvest in the film and TV sector. However, these mandates predate the streaming services like Amazon and Netflix, and so they are allowed to freely benefit from our system without the same responsibilities. Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, was just passed recently in the Senate in February, and pending some finalizations, aims to level the field. It will require streamers to broadcast a certain amount of Canadian content and enhance its discoverability in Canada, as well as make financial contributions. So this is going to make a big difference. First of all, yes, you should clap. It's okay. This is incredible, and I wanted to ask Ross his opinion. How will that help? I mean, obviously it helps to have more Canadian content, more Canadian production, and to support the Canadians. But how does that help the production music business or the music business, or does it?
Yeah, it's obviously a very thick topic, a lot to unravel. It can be complicated and it can be political. We take ownership of trying to move the needle up in Canada for production music, its exposure, and strengthening Canadian content through production music, which has never really been the case before. Although we do have a lot of CanCon, Canadian content, CanCon regulations north of the border, those regulations tend to not include production music. So that is obviously a goal that is very important to myself and other Canadians in the production music space, or players that are from other jurisdictions that are looking to work and be in the Canadian music industry. So helping us to push that along would be wonderful. We work with the Screen Composers Guild. Gagan is on the board of the Screen Composers Guild. I can state unequivocally that in the last 5 years, we've moved mountains with respect to the awareness and the respect and understanding of what the production music business is and how it would affect Canadian artists. And so again, we're always constantly trying to push that needle. Bill C-11, as Karen stated, has been passed in the Senate. Now it's been passed over to the body that governs Canadian content regulating in Canada, the CRTC, where they're going to determine how this bill is going to be implemented. So it is important that if any powers that be out there in the production music space, now is a good time to begin to help us push that needle so that production music is included in these types of usages.
I just wanted to clarify that Canadian content, in order to produce a film that qualifies as CanCon and benefit from some of the funding, it requires that, and again, these are oversimplifications, but it requires, for example, that 7 out of 10 of your key people are Canadian, and the key people might be the producer, the director, the DOP, and the composer. So one of the things that Ross is alluding to is, at this point, they don't include pre-written music or production music, any commercial music. It has to be originally written, and we're all lobbying to get that changed. So hopefully at some point in the future, the fact that there's more Canadian content being produced will mean that we will also get more business, and Canadians will get more business on any of your libraries. It doesn't mean that now. It does, however, the fact that we're all talking Canadian content in Canada means that a lot of producers just want to use Canadian music because of their pride. So, and talking about it and the government offering all these incentives just really bring it top of mind for everybody. So I think having more production in Canada, first of all, having more production in Canada, period, will bring more business to the production music field, whether it be Canadian composers or just production music libraries. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. Yeah, indirectly, the production music industry will benefit by bringing more productions to Canada.
Yeah.
And they do a good job at building those incentives, those tax incentives to bring new productions into Canada.
Great. Okay, let's talk a bit about SOCAN. Gagan, I know you're really on the creative end of it, so
Right.
I know the finances are not, the numbers are not your thing, so I'll throw this out to anybody because I think you
Sure.
and, well, Ross loves to study the numbers, so I really just want to ask, because I think anybody who has a library or composers that are hoping to make royalties in Canada want to know how they stack up. How is SOCAN doing? Is the money up? Is it down? Is there more production music being used in Canada than before? Just, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll speak in a general sense. AV music has been increasingly on an upward trajectory, regardless of, I know, sometimes a thought of that might not be there, but I think right now AV music is something like, or as of last year's numbers, we're 47% of SOCAN's overall revenue. So that's a big thing. This year, my team and I, actually, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Raquel Villagante and Liam Russell, who are in the back here. They work with me at our West Hollywood office. They're creative executives like I am with SOCAN. So we put together a new award at the SOCAN Awards called the Breakthrough Composer of the Year, and the first composer awarded that was a composer named Evan McDonald, who's had a lot of success working with companies like Premium Beat and Shutterstock, and his music has been, production music, library music has been used in, Michelle Obama commercials and big, car TV commercials, and those types of placements, they start to pay really well. The other thing is, SOCAN didn't previously pay on TV commercials, which when I got there, to me, that was pretty, shocking, staggering. So, we made a strong push, all of us, for that to happen, and that is, SOCAN is now collecting on all types of TV commercials with all types of network, and I believe it's retroactive as well. So there's another thing.
Gagan, I just want to ask.
Yeah.
Does anybody know that in Canada, SOCAN was not paying on commercials up until recently? Yeah, this is a big thing, and we're going to talk about it a bit more after, but I just wanted to find out if anybody knew, because I think that's one of the biggest things we can tell them today. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I mean, I think those are real wins right there. And then I think the other one is today, I'm sitting here in front of you guys. SOCAN is sponsoring, I don't believe SOCAN has previously sponsored the production music conferences in the past. So we made a push for that, and we've began a strong relationship here with the Production Music Conference, and we want to have that carrying forward. So I believe there is, as a composer, like I was mentioning to you, Karen, as well, is that as a composer, on the composer side, my push is for producers to be hiring composers. So I'll make that clear, and I think from my side that should always be the push. Original score is original score, and but at the same time, the future of production music is super valuable, and there's a lot of projects that even come across my way. I don't know what's going on behind me, but I think we got the carnival going on behind me.
Oopsie, the clown is back here.
Maybe at lunchtime we can all go check it out, But anyways,
I love your comment. That's what it is.
Okay, maybe it was my, but it's loud. It's
Can
loud
you
in
guys
my
hear
ear.
the clown noises and stuff? Okay.
Hopefully you guys can't hear that, but anyways. But production music is super valuable. There's a lot of content being created that's high value content, high quality content, where library music is very important, and the royalties, the back end to that is super important too. So I also see the other side of that as a composer who's written library music, and that's something that Ross and I talk a lot about with hard music, that there's a lot of ways a composer should be monetizing today's market, and some of that is leveraging their ability for original score, and then some of that is also the value of creating, composing and producing library music as well.
But can I add just a bit? That's wonderful, Gagan. When it comes to how many, I know there's a number of composers in the room. I've composed a lot production music over the many, many years, some 5,000 tracks. And one of the things I've always loved about it, and this isn't necessarily Canadian, but speaking to the creative side of the business that Gagan is alluding to right now, for me, I always loved composing production music because I always felt like I had a blank canvas in front of me. I wasn't painted into a box and told, this is where you got to stay, paint within these lines, and we'll accept it. It was always, what do you want to do for us? What is something that you would like to produce and compose? It was a very different way of approaching composition for AV. And it lent itself very well to me because I was prolific and I could compose in multitudes of genres. And that's something that I tell our young composers all the time is utilize the production music industry to hone your craft, incubate your craft, learn more, broaden your skill set, broaden your genres, explore, you know. And it's such a creative environment and a safe environment. That's something that we really try to push for. It's a safe, creative environment. And it's not, I find it to be somewhat non-competitive. And if you believe like I do, competition kills creativity. So that environment is extraordinarily friendly and conducive for really wonderful creative output. That's the message I was going to add to that. Composers, you should take pride in that work. You know, it's serious work, and it can build a lifelong career, a good career, a healthy career.
Can I add to that? Because I feel like there's something that I've noticed as well from the time that I just started production music and now is like before a lot of people were actually using fake names or pseudonyms, or they didn't want anybody to know that they were doing production music. That was kind of like a shameful thing to reveal. And now it's actually the opposite. And I'm actually curious if you've noticed this as well in Canada, but I know that I've noticed it in Europe and here, and how actually artist-focused the labels are going now, showcasing series about a composer. I've had the privilege of having that on various labels that basically were happy to showcase the artist and not just production music for the use of it. And I think that's a great change, and it really heightens the quality and the value of it for everybody.
And one more thing, if I could add. So for me, I think what was really eye-opening is when I was seeing a lot of my composer colleagues, using Evan as an example, they're getting flown out to Air Studios or Abbey Road and getting to do, work with top-tier orchestras and some of the best recording studios in the world on production music, and to some people, to some composers that was shocking, but to me I was like, okay, well this really is the future now. We have to learn how to leverage that as composers as well and music creators.
Here. Yeah, I
Here,
think
here.
that's great. I have to tell you, I was in the industry when people called it stock music, and many people were embarrassed to use it and to write for it. And nowadays, yes, we had artists that used aliases, and one of our artists, just 5 years ago, we were up for a Mark Award, and she not only won the Mark Award, but had a lot of success with the production music, and so she reached out and said, can I please go under my real name now? And I have another artist that did the same thing, and his career was launched from one of the tracks on our label, and ended up in a, not a commercial, but like a Dodo video, and it had something like 70 million views, and everybody was looking for this artist. So he's now on his second or third album, and he has a really big following. So, this is what's happening. Careers are launched from production music, and people are now proud of it, and the music is extraordinary. I mean, there are many people who just listen to production music. I can have it on in the background. I find some really nice chill music or hip-hop music. So it's nothing to be ashamed of, and on the contrary, it's pretty cool. So, okay, let's move on to some important things we should know about. First of all, public domain. I don't know how many of you knew, but in the past, songs entered the public domain 50 years after the death of the last composer in Canada. But that changed in 2015, and it's now, like the US, 70 years after the death of the last composer. So that's one change for you. Commercials. Well, so we talked a bit about that, and I'm going to talk with Ross because he's very familiar with this. As of, I think, this year, you can now get paid on commercials, and I'm not quite sure of how you get paid for your commercials. So take it away.
Yeah, I mean, this is something a number of years ago, probably over a dozen years ago, I kept pounding away at the powers that be at SOCAN about not paying for ads. Of course, that affects the production music industry directly. In Canada, they've never paid performance revenue on any of the ads. Now, if you had an infomercial, you'd be paid on that. So finally, at long last, in 2021, SOCAN announced that they were going to start collecting on ads, which of course we were thrilled to hear about. But one of the things, the caveat to this that we have to understand, if you understand how PROs work, they have multiple tariffs for multiple uses that they would license entities for. In this case, instead of carving out a unique tariff for ads, for music being used on ads, they're piggybacking on the tariff that's already established for music in TV. And so ads are being paid out at 5% of what that amount for music in show. Just so you're aware, it's not its own tariff, but that's something that we're working towards, is to build its own unique tariff and get proper collections moving forward on ads. But it is I would say a single base hit for any baseball guys out there. I'm hockey, so let's just say an assist for again, pushing that needle north of the border.
Talk about what is Canadian music. I mean, we have different kinds of music in Canada. When people call and say, "Can I get some Canadian music?" What are they talking about?
I can do a little bit of this. Generally, like years ago when I worked in the production music business, I became a music consultant. And during that phase of my career, every time, there were so many, I don't know why. First of all, my microphone's getting sticky with maple syrup. So just heads up, audio dudes.
I don't know if you want to touch that mic after that.
Very professional. Very professional. What was the question? Say it again.
Oh, music, Canadian music, what is it?
Oh, yeah. So when I used to work as a music consultant 100 years ago, if people were coming in, they were all close talkers. I don't know why, real close talkers. And they would come up and they would always ask for Celtic music was like the number one thing. That's what everybody thought Canadian music, like all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what was how we were pigeonholed. If somebody from another country contacted us and wanted Canadian music, that's what they were really looking for. So yeah, we're obviously a lot more than just that. And Acadian music and French Canadian music. Some people think Indigenous music, but Indigenous music, I will say, is not Canadian or American. Indigenous music is First Nations music. Those are sovereign nations, and they do not adhere to Canadian or American laws.
But, sorry, I'll interject.
Sorry
because
to get off the rails.
No, that's fine. But it is exactly what I wanted to hear. Is first of all, we do think of Indigenous music when people talk about Canada, or we get calls that are specific to Canada. It's typically French Canadian, Celtic, or Indigenous music, right?
And French Canadian, Acadian music as well.
I'd like to interject, if I may.
I hope.
I think Canadian music has really changed. From our Montreal office, we have some tremendous songwriters from Quebec, composers from Quebec that see songwriting camps and music being exported in Paris, France, which leads me to us developing. SOCAN has something called a Paris House. Like we have houses in Nashville, in LA, in Paris now, and a lot of our music, wherever the music is tending to get used and our songwriters are being exported out to, for example, is where these houses tend to live. We have great country artists, do a lot of work in Nashville. We have incredible pop talent. Some of that pop talent, you got, The Weeknd is from Scarborough, Ontario, right where I was born and raised. Shawn Mendes, his parents live like 2 blocks north of me in Pickering, Ontario. They've had a lot of success in the States. That's today's Canadian music, Canada is the third largest exporter of video game music in the world right now,
Wow.
after the States and after Japan.
Wow.
A lot of my financial success came from animated music and video game soundtracks. And, you know, so it's a healthy territory. And a lot of Americans and Canadians are collaborating together. And the reason for that collaboration is, you know, I go back to that food analogy. We have everything going on there, right? We have Korean food, Korean music, right? We have Indian food, Indian music. We have tons of European culture over there. You go to Quebec, and it's like, you know, Montreal is like such a beautiful, unique city of its own, just on tourism alone. But you look at the musical culture there, the architectural culture there, right? It's very, very inspiring in a lot of different aspects of the music production space.
Yeah, and like I was saying, the two languages are also bringing totally different heritage and music. And yeah, there is the Acadian side on the east, but you know, the French as well. Like, there's a lot of singers that are influenced by France, like you said, you know. And I think Canadian artists really love to explore. There's so many tours, and because there is, I think, a lot of support with grants that helps Canadian actually tour abroad and probably come back with new influences. So I think that also helps.
Yeah, speaking about, I'll try to be as quick as possible with this, but it's a real large advantage of being Canadian is the fact that our government tends to lean into the creative arts, and they provide a plethora of different grant funding opportunities for artists and for companies up there. We've been on the winning side of that for a number of years. I can tell you that 10 years ago, there was no way that any body that provides grants in Canada would have never invested in a production music company. Not a chance. They were dead set against it. In fact, we tried so many times that we ended up changing the name of what we did. We changed it to Music for Media. We changed it just to try and get in. I did everything to try and get in those doors. Finally, 1 year it worked. And the reason that it worked was a combination of using Music for Media, but also that we had artist labels that were available on the DSPs. And that tipped them over the edge. They were like, well, you're making great revenue. Your composers, you're bringing 7 figures a year into the music economy. But we're not recognizing production music as having the value to invest in it. Finally, with just a little bit of trying to navigate through that, we were able to get in, and now they can't let go of us. Because talking earlier, our BIPOC numbers, our diversity, equity, inclusion, it resonates. So up there, we have this wonderful advantage of being able to tap into this kind of funding, and it allows us to accelerate our growth and try to compete against the companies south of the border, which is very difficult for some of us to do.
Thanks. And I'm going to try and wrap this up now and give a couple of points here. First of all, I wanted to say that for Indigenous people, the government's giving grants to producers who are doing Indigenous films and Indigenous music and arts as well, artists. Exchange rates, the fact that our dollar is worth less than the US is bringing a lot of business into Canada because it's so affordable. 2 languages, I just wanted to mention, if you are doing a commercial in Canada and you wanted to go into Quebec, you actually are mandated to do it in French as well as English. So that's sometimes a bit of a challenge, because if you're charging French and English, someone may say, well, but I have no choice. If I'm doing it across Canada, it's the government that says I have to do another version, and yet, we'll often charge. So it's just something you might want to know here. I think I would say in summary, Canada is a hotspot for creativity and expression, which really complements our thriving production scene. Our favorable exchange rates attract international productions, and with all our government tax incentives and grants, and the recent introduction of Bill C-11 advocating for more productions, The Canadian film and TV industry is thriving. Add to that the growing support and recognition for production music from organizations like SOCAN and our clients recognizing it. The future looks very prosperous in Canada. And I don't know if you guys have any takeaways about Canada.
I think we have some pressing questions here. I saw
Yeah.
Liam's hand. I see a lot of hands in the back. So I just want to make sure, Karen, we have time for questions.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Oh yeah. Just a quick clarification regarding Indigenous music.
Yep.
I'm Liam. I work for SOCAN. I work with Guggen here in LA. And something that I know that community really wants clarified when we're working with them in any way with music is that when you say Indigenous music, to specify that you mean traditional music or Indigenous meaning just made by an Indigenous person, and that's like an inclusivity kind of situation. That's just an important thing to clarify.
Well, it's a great question, and I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is that there are grants for Indigenous people to create music, so it doesn't have to be Indigenous music.
Entirely. I just mean if you're looking, like you were talking about coming to Canada for specific musics and what we have to offer the rest of the world, and that one of the most common ones is Indigenous music. It's important to specify if you're coming to us for that, if it is a traditional style of Indigenous music, that community really prefers that you are clear about that, because sometimes they get asked to do things just generically because it's an Indigenous music request or community. But if you want traditional Indigenous music, that's a specific thing. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I get what you're saying there for sure. I understand that for sure. Yeah, you know, traditional Indigenous music, or I know it'd be called Indigenous folk music as well, right? And you know, and those are serious songs that are handed down through generations. And you know, if you're going to try and secure the rights to music like that, you have to understand that you're in an environment that's extraordinarily sensitive, and you're not going to be able to license that kind of material through bulk licensing deals or through blanket agreements where you have no control over where the music's going to be used. And in quite often, artists have to run the use of music or even the composition of music by the elders in their group just to participate. So it's a complicated area. Is that the 5 minute? Is that the signal to stop? Is that the signal to stop? Or is that the signal to?
I think it's a question. I think we got questions.
I
So
see.
can we take questions?
Sure.
Hi, how are you? So, is it advisable for a non-Canadian production music company to try and enter Canada? And what's the competition like?
Whoa. That is the golden question, I think, for a lot of you in the room, I would guess. In my opinion, again, we're 1/10 the size of the United States. The majority of the suppliers of production music to Canada come from the United States. So they would be the APMs and the Universals and the Five Alarms and so on. We do have a larger company north of the border called Anthem. Anthem owns Jingle Punks and Cavendish and a few others. And they'll license directly, of course. So if you're a sub-publisher or a catalog owner and you're looking to explore business in Canada, that is a pie that is being eaten already by a number of facilitators. So it's a tough row to hoe. You've got to be willing to put in a lot of time and be very patient with that jurisdiction.
When it comes to the repertoire for production music companies such as APM or Warner Chappell Production Music,
Right.
Is there a percentage of, I know it's not mandated by the government, is it advisable to have a repertoire that reflects Canadian composers, would you say?
Yes. Yes. Short answer, yes.
I mean,
Won't hurt.
it's like right now, as we were talking about earlier, production music doesn't qualify as Canadian content. We are trying to change that, but we still have producers that will call and say, well, I'd like to at least search Canadian music. Ultimately, they're going to license whatever's going to work best, but it makes them feel better to at least listen through some Canadian music, so it doesn't hurt you to have it. And any country you go into, it's good to have music from, you know, their country by their writers. I think everybody has that sense of pride. We're just a bit more so, or maybe a lot more so. But yeah, and I think that our country is very similar to like Poland, Iraq, like in size and population, and probably, like, so there's lots of countries in Europe that would be similar. So the question is, would you want to be in any of them? You want to be in all of them. They all add up.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think we have a question in the back.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
She's been waiting a minute for this.
Okay, here we go. Hi, I have a question from one of the virtual attendees on the live stream. This comes from Michelle Weiss-Maslin. She says, thank you so much, Karen and panel. My question is, it's so interesting about the CanCon rules, as I have had pre-existing songs that were slated to be theme songs on Canadian shows, but then they were disqualified last minute and only used in the body of the shows because of not having enough CanCon. But are you saying those rules don't apply for pre-existing music? Can you explain further?
Yeah, Michelle, and I know Michelle very well. How are you? We can talk about this. I'm really surprised because our understanding, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate, is CanCon applies to the composers. Now, the original composers of the score. Now, there are other, I mean, we didn't want to overcomplicate things here, but there are other tax credits for companies who spend their money in Canada. And so if they're buying the music in Canada, they will qualify. It has nothing to do with CanCon in that case. Well, not CanCon, it has nothing to do with the composer where they live. It depends on where you're paying for it, so they don't really care. So they'll buy it from a library. And I don't know if it's possible that that's why the music is removed, but I'd like to get more details because that doesn't make sense, what I'm hearing.
I think we had another.
Hi. Thank you guys for the panel. It was really great. I'm coming from an American production music library. And I was just curious about the stuff that you're pushing. How would that impact companies like APM or larger companies that are already doing business in the production music world in Canada? Would that essentially kind of cut their market share and increase the market share of Canadian production music? Would there be ways for them to kind of work within that? How is that kind of being looked at with what you guys are proposing?
Well, again, right now, since production music doesn't qualify, the only reason we do better every year is just simply because there's more productions. And there's lots of productions in Canada that don't qualify for CanCon. Tons of TV series and films that don't qualify, so they use whatever music is appropriate to use. So at this point in time, it's not affecting us, and it doesn't benefit us in any other way other than some people just really want to use Canadian music, so they ask for it. And again, sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't, but they don't have to. Hope that made sense. You can add.
Yeah, I mean,
It sounded like you guys were proposing something that it would count, right? Is that what you were talking about?
Well, Ross has been, I think this is your question, Ross is
Yep.
spearheading trying to get pre-recorded music included.
Right.
Like we're actually not saying it's production music because it sounds better to the powers that be to just say we should include all commercial music.
Totally.
And that would include us too. So I don't know how fast that's going to happen, but that's something we're working on. And then yes, it would make a difference if you have Canadian content.
yeah, just to cover the spearheading of this, I try to put as much time into it as I possibly can. I'm a massive advocate for the production music industry globally, at large. So I'm working with SOCAN and working with the Screen Composers Guild, working with a number of funding bodies up there, working with CAVCO, CRTC, trying to ensure that production music is included in these metrics and in these applications. If you were to look at it, and this has been kind of a lifelong thing for me, I've been doing this for upwards to 15 years, if you were to look at the music, the production music that is being distributed to Canada, I can assure you that all of that music that's being used, 50% of the music that is being performed on networks in Canada, 30 different networks, come from production music, approximately 50%. Out of that 50%, there's less than 0.01% Canadian composers in those catalogs, which that disparity alone is shocking. So when you consider 50% of the music that we're listening to comes from production music, but less than 1% is Canadian content in that realm. And that's what I've been trying to, this is the proof and the metrics that I use to try and keep pushing the needle. And it's gonna happen eventually, or I'm gonna drop dead doing it, one or the other. You know, and if I keep drinking maple syrup, there's a strong possibility I may not even get off this stage.
Yes, sir. To Michael Levine, and I think a lot of people know who Michael is, a great composer in our audience.
Well, I was a student at McGill over a half a century ago, and one of the things that really struck me was how distinctive Quebecois music was at the time. And of course, it was great to connect with Natalie years later and see the current state of the situation. But as an American, one of the things that really impressed me was the Canadian content laws. And I felt like, you know, my musical career was launched in that time that I was there, and it was in part because of those laws which really encouraged this kind of cultural development. I wish there were something like that in the United States. About the closest we've got are, you know, there are a couple of federal grants and state grants and so forth, but they're pretty weak. And so this is really not a question, it's more me just saying, go team, go. What you're doing is really important for music in general, but specifically for the musicians I know in Canada. And that I think the divide between popular music and production music has gotten narrower and narrower in recent years, and I'm glad to see that you're working to get it erased.
And that's another great point that Michael brings up. I was lucky to study at the University of Toronto. Nat, did you?
I went to McGill.
You went to McGill as
You
well,
went to
right?
school?
And the education system in music is excellent there, and I think we all can speak to that. So it's a great kind of you know, development camp, so to speak. That again, like I say, when we get out of Canada and we export our music to the States or to Europe or to Asia, there's a lot of love there.
Oh, sorry. I think we're hogging the question for him. Actually, I've been texting in real time with another one of our Canadian composers, and let him know about your great work in being able to retroactively collect on music used for commercials. And so the question, actually coming from Quebec, is what does he need to do to collect it?
Well, send him my email, Marette, and I'll get him hooked up. I'll just plug him in directly.
Well,
Seriously, I think that would be the fastest way.
Great.
Is to just, if they could reach out to me, or we can, you know, if we can. And by the way, everyone, Marette, if you just want to take a moment to introduce yourself too, because.
Okay. Hello, I'm Marette Sierig, and I am the founder of Empath Music, a library, and proudly the first and only that we know of music production company of its kind to have achieved gender parity and full inclusion. We co-publish with APM Music. I'm very happy, and ever since we founded, and Extreme Music in the UK, which was KPM, which was EMI. So our music it does have global representation. Anyone who I actively scout high talent, especially for women and other underrepresented groups, and I'll be around for the next 3 days. Tag me down. Thank you for that, Greg.
Marette is another leader in the space, so again, we're lucky to have her in the audience today. I think there's another question coming from
Can I just need to answer that question a little bit better for you. No offense, Goggin, but he's not really that bright. He is single.
I'm not.
He is single.
I'm not. I look like I'm smart, but
Yeah, and he looks like he's single. But I did want to add
Look like
this, that about a year and a half ago, SOCAN and BMAT coordinated forces. BMAT is now has worked since late 2022, tracking and collecting all of the music, all of the performances for ads. So you'll be able to contact SOCAN. BMAT's collecting everything. If you join BMAT, you can actually go into the dashboard and see all of your ads that may have been performed, and you can claim them. And I think we have a BMAT person.
Oh,
here.
yes, that's great.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Nan.
So, Nan Wilson, BMAT. Couple of points of clarification.
thank you.
So we, the global SOCAN BMAT, only go back to the beginning of 2022 for retroactive. And there is no need to join BMAT. If you're a Canadian rights holder, hi Marette, you join SOCAN. You want to get your content uploaded to BMAT. And I think it's like truly awesome to have everybody contact you. And then you will direct them. No, seriously. Because quite honestly, it's been an issue.
I shouldn't have opened that can of worms.
Well, and so then you'll connect them to the right people.
Absolutely. I would be more than happy to.
Yeah.
Nan, before you stop.
you, Nan.
Hold on. So somebody from another country and they have commercials airing in Canada, what do they do?
It's quite all right. So the best thing to do is, of course, to have a Canadian sub-publisher. If you have a Canadian sub-publisher, then that Canadian sub-publisher will contact you.
Right.
Okay,
Of course.
but if they're not here, there is a portal on SOCAN that you can go to and get information. Let's just say that. You can make claims on music that hasn't been paid. You can get information. You can learn how to upload your content. If you are a composer who does not have a Canadian sub-publisher, there's a couple of things you can do. One is, okay, all PROs around the world have reciprocal agreements, and eventually you will get your payments through those reciprocal agreements. But key is if it's in Canada, your music should be uploaded to BMAT. Route number one. Route number two, if you're a US composer or a composer in many countries, you can get a territorial release and you can join SOCAN directly. Does that answer the question?
Hey, that's great. That's great. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just important for people to know Canada's paying out on commercials. If you have reason to believe your commercial is being played in Canada, or you have many commercials in Canada, then, you know, there's a method to get your money now. Cool.
Do we have any more questions? I think there's a couple more.
What is a territorial release to get to sign up with SOCAN? If I'm over here, what's a territorial release?
So you go to your PRO and you say, I no longer want to be represented in Canada by ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, or GMR. And you put that in writing in an email. You can submit it through the member portal or whatever. And then once you receive confirmation that you've been released, you would go to SOCAN and you'd become a direct member. It's not as simple as what I'm saying, but that's basically the process.
I was going to say, will that confuse things with the ASCAP BMI systems with paying out royalties if
Not
you do
for
something
Canada. You'll get your money much faster.
directly from Canada?
Much faster and more.
Okay.
On that note,
On that note, yes. Well, thank you all very much for coming. I hope this was good for you.
Merci, merci.
Was it good for you?
It was good. It was good.
thank you, everybody.
Enjoy your lunch. We'll
Thanks,
see you
Karen.
around.